Good evening. Thank you for joining us for Washington County Republican Party's forum with our sheriff candidates for the runoff. My name is Joe Beffer, chairman of the Washington County Republican Party. Thank you for viewing this evening, and thank you for educating yourselves on the runoff election. I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing Billy Roan, vice chair of the Washington County Republican Party, to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Joe. If you wouldn't mind standing, and then please remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance following the prayer. If you would join me in prayer. Almighty God, we come thanking you for the many blessings that you have provided for Bartlesville. We thank you that your thoughts for Bartlesville are thoughts of peace and not evil, to give us a good future and a continuous hope. We thank you for bringing us here to live, to work, and for providing the opportunities for us to do good for others. We are grateful for these gentlemen who are here this evening to speak to all of us, and for the courage and the servant's hearts that you have given them, which is evidenced by their lives, their occupations of serving others. Please help them to speak thoughtfully from the heart this evening. Please help us to be ever mindful of the liberties and the freedoms that we have been given because of courageous men and women over 200 years ago, and which have continued because of that same courage and bravery of men and women serving others, defending our nation's people today. From our police department, our sheriff's department, all the way up to our commander-in-chief. May we never forget the price paid and ever be grateful. May all the glory be yours. In Jesus' mighty name we pray, let it be so. I would like to bring Wendy Stearman up to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. She is a Republican candidate for District 11 and who will be on the general election ballot November 3rd. Wendy?
Thank you, Billy. If everyone will join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Wendy. You may be seated. We want to thank all of you who are here this evening, and to all who have joined us on KWON and KWONTV.com. A big thank you to Bartlesville Radio for providing the time for this candidate forum, for the Office of Sheriff of Washington County, to hear from candidates Jeff Fessler and incumbent Scott Owens. I would at this time like to turn this over to Tom Davis, who will be our moderator for the evening.
Thank you, Billy. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen at home. And once again, this is our Sheriff's Forum. It's a virtual forum. We're at City Hall tonight, and we thank you for joining us on K1 AM and FM and also on K1TV.com. Now, this is a forum and not a debate. We're going to hear a lot from both of our candidates, the incumbent Sheriff Scott Owen and challenger Jeff Fessler. Once again, the runoff election is coming up on August 25th, and we do have the early voting on that Thursday and Friday prior to the election. This is brought to you by Phillips 66 and the Washington County Republican Party. First of all, we're going to go with our opening statements, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Fessler. And Jeff, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jeff Fessler, and I want to start off by thanking the Washington County Republican Committee and Phillips 66 for hosting this forum in conjunction with KWON Radio. I am a 25-plus years public servant with 18 years of law enforcement experience. I served 11 years full-time with the Washington County Sheriff's Department under Pat Ballard and another 5 years in reserve status. During my tenure with the Sheriff's Office, I served in just about every area within the department, from dispatch, jail, civil service, training, school resource officer, DARE officer, and field training officer. I am a certified advanced instructor with CLEAT and assisted with firearms block at the State Police Basic Academy and taught area law enforcement agencies. I have owned Pepper Fence for the past 7 years and continued its superior reputation by garnering Best Fence Company the entire time. I've done this by operating it with customer service, honor, integrity, and paying attention to details, and I want to do the same thing with the Sheriff's Department. I want to focus on training and proper mentorship for the department personnel. Morale within the department is at an all-time low. According to the Washington County Clerk's Office, the department has lost 33 employees in the last, since January 19th. That's 19 months, folks. Some left without jobs lined up. That's indicative of a problem within. I have spoken to former employees and some of the current employees, and I have an idea what the problem is. I have a desire to return the department to its former reputation where employees enjoyed coming to work, they felt like they had a vested interest and a voice, and citizens were treated with respect until given a reason not to. I want to restore public trust in the Sheriff's Office. I think we have to be responsive to the people and the citizens that we serve. The citizens of Washington County are our employers. The average citizen might experience one crisis in their life that causes them to call 911. We need to bear in mind, regardless of how mundane or routine that call might be for us as the law enforcement officers, that citizen is experiencing a crisis, and we need to treat it with such regard and respect that they deserve. I have the leadership skills and desire needed to lead this department in the direction that I feel we need to go. I have the morals and ethics needed to lead this department in the direction that I feel we need to go. I also have the backbone and the fortitude needed to lead this department in the direction that I feel we need to go. There are a lot of things going on within the department that the average citizen is not aware of, some of which will be brought to light in the near future. Trust me when I say we need change. And with your vote for Jeff Fessler for sheriff, you can be the one to initiate change. I and my leadership team will do the rest.
Thank you, Jeff Fessler. Our opening statement from Sheriff Scott Owen.
Good evening, folks, and I'd like to thank as well the Republican Party and Phillips 66 for sponsoring this forum. This is a very open agenda, and we're lucky to be blessed with companies and supporters in this community that pick up the public interest. My name's Scott Owen. I'm your current sheriff, and I began my career in 1985 at the Bartlesville Police Department and worked there for 25 years, where I worked up through the ranks from patrol and specialized in several areas, including accident investigation, became an advanced instructor in air accidents, and was promoted to sergeant in 1995, where I entered the supervision field. And during that period, I worked all three shifts as a sergeant and a lieutenant prior to being promoted to captain. As captain, I served the last 3 or 4 years of my career there in upper management, where we dealt with a lot of things, including training and resources and allocations. We covered the training issues by training inside and as well with CLEAT, and that still goes on today in the law enforcement field. However, CLEAT, our state supplier of training, has not been able to provide the services necessary. So therefore, we have certified more instructors at the sheriff's office, and also utilize a lot of outside classes. They are at a cost to the taxpayers, but we try to minimize that cost at every opportunity. Therefore, upon leaving the police department after being asked by Rick Silver and Steve Johnson to join the sheriff's department in 2010, following my 25-year career at Bartlesville, I worked patrol, went from patrol to transport, and supervised the transport unit. And in January of 2019, I was promoted, or actually appointed by the commissioners, to fulfill Rick's 2-year term. At that time, there's always been issues within any institution you work for. It doesn't matter who it is. So we've always had challenges. We run the 7th largest jail in the state of Oklahoma. Most people don't realize that. We had a much smaller jail, and when they built the new one and moved into it in 2010, 2011 timeframe, we went from being a very small jail to being a bigger fish in the pond. That required us to go from like a dozen jailers or so to at least 28 or so jailers plus support staff, which includes jail administrators and medical staff. Few people know that we have to staff the medical down there on a full-time basis, and we do that within the department, and we utilize a local doctor under contract.
Sheriff, we've run out of time on the open statements. So thank you very much. We do have 3 minutes for opens and closes, 2 minutes for the answering of questions. We're going to start off with our first question with Jeff Vessler. And Jeff, tell us please tonight, what is your platform and how do you intend on bringing about effective change if elected?
Well, my platform has changed with honor and integrity. I think this department, I just want to take it in a different direction than it's headed right now. And we need to work on retention of employees, increase morale within the department by giving the deputies a sense of a voice. You know, I'd like to sit down with them and find out what are some of the issues and then address those issues. And during an assessment period, find out what are the inner workings and how can we change that. We also need to work on some training issues within the jail and patrol. We got a lot of good personnel there. I just don't want to lose them all. And so we need to address some of the issues that are internal within the jail, as well as you know, the patrol and stuff like that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring the same question to you, Sheriff Owen. What is your platform and what do you intend to do to bring about effective change if elected?
Well, the Washington County Sheriff's Office is a very unique place to work. Our work, even though we are in the law enforcement field, is much different from the city. So we strive to serve the rural communities and the cities as well, especially the small towns. Mm-hmm. What I plan to do is to increase, if possible, the patrol sector and increase the investigations division to combine and do a better follow-up and a higher volume of follow-up on cases. We already do a really good job of that. We actually train the deputies to be field investigators because with only 2 investigators, we can't do a whole lot. So my deal is try to get the working horses out there doing their job and serving the community while reducing overhead and actually probably reducing a little bit of management because you can have too many chiefs and not enough Indians from time to time. And having said that, we want to serve the people and get the best, most effective use of the tax dollars. Other than that, the jail I was talking about, we do have a very large jail there, and we want to make sure that that's run effectively. The retention of employees is an important factor, mm-hmm. and I've been looking into that for months. Actually went back in the archives and found about 4 file drawers full of former employees, many of which left over very short periods of time. So, and there are various reasons for that. Retention in the jail has always been a historic problem because some people just can't be jailers. Mm-hmm. Some people can't be law enforcement. We have to choose the right people and then mold and mentor those right people into the positions.
All right, thank you. We're going to stick with you, Sheriff, on this question, then back to Jeff on it. What are you or what do you think can be done to ensure that the detention facility is running efficiently and is a healthy environment for inmates and employees?
That's a really good question. We have stringent policies and stringent rules and have rewritten many in very recent past. As a matter of fact, the state has recently upgraded and give us the new improved jail standards. So number 1, we have to abide by state jail standards. That's number 1. Number 2, our internal policies are updated and reviewed regularly, and our administrator has also come on board with a company that has basically commercial jail policy. And we're using those changes and amendments and reviews to assure that we've got good policies to train the people to do that. We're very cognizant of the food cost, the overhead cost, maintenance cost, and the liability. So, which is the bottom line for the taxpayers, the liability of the jail.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Same question to you, Jeff Hessler. What do you plan to do to ensure that the detention facility is running efficiently and is a healthy environment for both the inmates and for the employees?
Well, I think a lot of the issues that the jail is currently having translate back to training, and if you adequately train these young gentlemen who come in, young gentlemen and women who come in and serve, then they get a good foundation on which to build from once they move out into the field, because typically the jail is a training grounds for patrol. I'd like to go over the policies and procedures. There's policies and procedures that are written by the Oklahoma Sheriff's Association that are based off of the Oklahoma jail standards. And so if we adopt those policies and procedures and make them fit with our department, then we'll be in alignment with the Oklahoma jail standards. And so we'll be in compliance with that. That'll alleviate a lot of the issues, because with the clearly defined policies and procedures, then everyone knows exactly where they're at and what they can do and what they cannot do. And so work on that, plus just training and equipping these kids with giving them the tools that they need to do the job effectively.
Okay. And I want to remind the viewers and listeners that you're listening to this on K1 AM 1400, FM 93.3, and you're watching this on K1TV.com. This is our Sheriff's Forum in virtual status here, and it's brought to you by Phillips 66 and the Washington County Republican Party. Mr. Fessler, I'm going to return to you for this next question. How does the recent Supreme Court ruling, McGirt versus U.S., regarding Indian territory and country and reservations potentially affect the sheriff's office right here and local law enforcement?
That's a good question. I don't think there's anyone out there that knows exactly how it's going to affect everything. There's a lot of unknowns out there. We're going to have to wait for some of the courts to figure out exactly what's going to transpire. I think the first step is to get with the tribes and get a working agreement with them to whenever we encounter someone who is a tribal member and they've committed a crime, make sure we file it in appropriate courts and make the appropriate contacts to get the right people involved at the onset of the case. And then we'll just figure out where the courts tell us where to send stuff.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Sheriff Scott Owen, the same question to you. How does the recent Supreme Court ruling, in McGirt versus the U.S., ruling regarding Indian country, Indian territory, and tribal lands potentially affect the sheriff's office and law enforcement?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. We've been tracking that for a long time since it went into the Supreme Court, and we were wondering where it was going to go. Essentially, we've established communications with the federal prosecutors at Tulsa through the DA's office, and we've also, the U.S. Marshal Service, planning for this. First of all, citizen safety is the first thing that we consider. All of my deputies are cross-deputized with the Cherokee Nation, so if we do have a problem, we handle it, and safety is the first issue, and securing a violent prisoner will not change. However, once it's established that it's a tribal issue, we notify the proper authorities with the federals, and they will come in and take over the investigation. We will work with them side by side to handle that, and we're also working with the U.S. Marshal Service to provide a agreement for housing potential federal prisoners locally.
All right. Another question for you, Scott. What changes have you seen in the nature of crimes that have been committed over the last, let's say, a decade or so? And what aspects of our culture do you think are fueling these crimes?
Well, there is a large percentage of domestic violence that takes place, and that usually works through a cycle. It gets worse and worse as it goes. Since I've joined the sheriff's office, we have had several domestic homicides outside the city, and we've had several within the city. So those crimes are on the rise. The other thing that is on the rise is child abuse and exploitation. I think it's linked to a lot of socioeconomic things possibly from time to time, but it's also linked to the substance abuse problem more closely than that, because one will perpetuate the other. If you have a drug problem that's increasing, and we do have in Oklahoma, and we do have in the nation, and we do have in Bartlesville and Washington County, a majority of our prisoners are kept there for drug charges, which precipitates many of this.
Okay, very good. And to you, Jeff Fessler, what changes have you seen in the nature of crimes being committed over the last decade or so here locally, and what aspects of our culture do you think are feeding these crimes?
Well, I think that property crimes are on an increase, as well as the domestics and stuff. I think what precipitates a lot of those is the mental health issues that are facing our nation, and also the drug addiction. They kind of go hand in hand. When someone gets on the drug addiction train, they start spending their money. Well, they run short of money, so they go out and they increase. That increases the property crimes because they're going out and breaking in, getting petty thefts and stuff to help feed their addiction. So I think we need to address those issues, and it's gonna help.
Okay, Jeff, back to you here. What are the biggest issues or challenges that are faced by deputies in Washington County, as far as you can see?
Say that again.
What are the biggest issues or challenges that are being faced by the deputies in Washington County?
Well, aside from the internal problems within the department, I think it's just lack of funding. We need more money so we can increase training and give them the proper tools that they need to do their job. Then the danger level, the violent crimes are increasing. We've got more officer-involved shootings and stuff like that. So we need to address those issues and work on that and get our deputies the proper tools that they need to do their job.
Thank you. And the same question to you, Scott. What are the biggest issues or challenges faced by the deputies in Washington County?
Well, there's several things. Part of the time it is called response times in general because of the size of the county, the way this county is geographically laid out. We're 11 miles across and 40 miles long, and if you've got 2 or 3 deputies working, your response time could be a rather lengthy drive, up to 15 or 20 minutes, depending on where the deputy's at. In an emergency situation, they try to get there as fast and safe as they can, and that sort of thing dwells on them, and they try very hard to make up for that difference. Other than that, it would always be good to have more deputies on the street. That converts to nothing except more tax dollars. The average deputy with roll-up, our deputies make around $35,000 a year, but with roll-up costs associated with that to the county, their cost is about $60,000 per deputy. Then you factor a car and other things in, it would necessitate a little bit more money, just as was mentioned, and that would allow us to increase the patrol staff.
Next question to you. What improvements do you see making to best serve the residents of Washington County, both short and long range?
Well, I've given that a lot of thought, and I kind of touched on it just a little bit before. I would like to and plan on finding a way to increase the patrol staff for active patrols and to increase the investigations unit, adding on at least one more investigator for follow-up crimes. One of the things that we have just recently done, we have a certified DARE instructor, and we're beginning the DARE program in elementary schools at Caney Valley and Copan, and that is all fully funded by donations and at no cost to the taxpayers. The other thing is we've continued our program with Caney Valley. We're school resources deputies in the schools. We want to get in and we want to get to teaching and influencing the children so that they make good life decisions. They're taught to make that, and that's the big thing about DARE and school resources.
Very good. Jeff Fessler, to you, what improvements do you see making it to best serve the residents of Washington County, both long range and short range?
Okay. One thing that I would like to focus on, and this will be a long-term goal, is really get a good foundation built in the jail with training and proper mentorship, because patrol typically draws from the jail to fill its slots. And so we hire these young kids, 18, 19, 20 years old, and, you know, they're young, full of testosterone, and they're full of themselves, and they go in the jail and they start having a little power, and sometimes that power goes to their head. Not all the time, but sometimes it does. And so they start treating these inmates like they're criminals. And our jail is not full of criminals. Our jail is full of bad decision makers. There is a certain percentage that are incorrigible and they need to be locked up, but the vast majority of the people in that jail are just bad decision makers. And then they're humans, and you need to treat them like such. And so if we can teach these young kids exactly how to interact with people, and then so when they go out in the field, then they'll rely on their training, and they'll treat the citizens the same way that they treated the inmates down in the jail, with respect and kindness. I'd like to increase patrol and get more deputies out on the street so we can stop some of these property crimes, and then increase community policing aspect of it. Create more situations where we have positive interaction between citizens and the police department, so that we can continue to foster the good relationship that we have with the citizens here in Washington County. I don't want to say we're insulated from the national problems, but we have a good rapport with the citizens, and I want to foster that and continue that.
Jeff, to continue with you with this next question, what do you think the biggest need of the Washington County Sheriff's Department is now, and what would you do to fill that need?
One of the biggest needs, I hate to start, be harping on this, but is training for these guys. My personal experience with some situations that I incurred as a citizen, and also that were brought to my attention from other citizens who knew I had a law enforcement background or worked at the sheriff's office, they complained about certain issues. The attitude of the deputies rolling up. They get out of the car with the condescending tone, superior attitude, and they treat people like they're stupid and with disrespect. And I've seen that personally. I want to restore that public service-minded mentality to where they're going above and beyond to help people. I rolled up on a deputy that was sitting in his car while a lady was changing her flat tire. I stopped and helped her because the deputy was sitting in the AC with his car. Stuff like that is unacceptable in my opinion, and I want to restore the department to its former glory, the way it was whenever I worked there, and we did those things. We stopped and talked to the farmer alongside the road to build that public service mentality and build that community policing. And so I want to have proper mentorship and proper training for all the department personnel.
Thank you, Jeff. Same question to you, Sheriff. What do you think the biggest need of the Washington County Sheriff's Department is now, and what would you like to do to fill that need?
The biggest need there at the sheriff's office is multifold. We've touched on a whole lot of those things, and we keep coming back to this training, and I just think that the public should know we do have established training programs in there. They're mandatory original jail certification. Their first few months there is an 18-hour jail certification, followed up by 8 hours a year of recertification. That's just in the jail. The problem we have is when we do send these officers out for training and they come to the field, they go to CLEAT or for basic academy. That is 16 weeks. And we train these deputies for 16 weeks, then we bring them back for an additional 12 to 16 weeks of field training. So once we get one out in the field, we don't have them available for service for about a half a year once we get them out. Then they have to start learning how to do the job, and sometimes they do make mistakes, and sometimes we encounter those and correct those. We try to mentor them. We try to bring them up. If we have a deputy that we discover is having an issue with public service, we address the situation in a positive, constructive manner and make sure that they are suited for that position. And that, sometimes leads to people being reassigned or taking different lines of occupations when they don't reposition as they might need be.
Okay. We're going to stick with you for this next question. This is general regarding law enforcement. What do you think is the biggest issue facing law enforcement today?
Well, it's numerous. One of the biggest issues is the decay of morals and ethics in the world in general. It's leading to more violence from here to there. We have taken God out of school. We've taken God out of government, and when you do that, it takes it away from the people. I just think we're in a different time where the certain factions of the public think that they're above the law, and then we allow that to perpetuate itself, and it becomes an uncontrollable at times, as we've seen in the larger communities. We've been very blessed in Oklahoma, especially up here in Bartlesville. We had some very good demonstrations that took place, and it spoke well of the whole community as a whole because it was for the right reasons. I just think we're going to see a lot of changes in law enforcement to adapting to the ethical behavior of law enforcement and their interactions with people, treating people like people.
Very good. Question to you is, what is the biggest issue facing law enforcement today, Jeff?
I think one of the main issues, there's several of them, but I think one of the main issues is the lack of public trust within the law enforcement community, not necessarily here locally, but globally or, nationally speaking. And I think that comes from, just a disregard for authority. Many years ago, we took God out of the schools. They can't spank kids now. The breakdown of the family unit, there's a lot of pieces that contribute to that, where people just don't trust the men and women of law enforcement. And I think we need to get back to that. Luckily, here locally, we have a good rapport with our citizens for the most part. And I would like to foster that by having more community policing initiatives put into place. The Sheriff's Department already has a couple good programs that they do the Thanksgiving baskets and the Christmas presents and that type of stuff. But I'd like to get more in depth by possibly creating a not necessarily a citizens panel, not necessarily for oversight, but just a roundtable discussion between law enforcement and citizens, where we can see their points of view and they can see our points of view, and we just maintain those open lines of communication and foster that relationship between the citizens and the excuse me, and the law enforcement.
This next question is something we kind of touched on in a few of our back and forths earlier, but I'm going to go back to it. What are the top priorities for deputies, specifically in regards to property crime and controlled dangerous substances, drugs?
Could you restate that question?
Yeah. What are the top priorities for our deputies when they're dealing with property crime and controlled dangerous substances?
It's kind of a twofold question. With property crimes, the responsibilities of the deputy is to take the initial report and investigate that report and find the person who's responsible for the theft and return the property and prosecute the thief. With controlled dangerous substance, similar, depending on the situation that they encounter it in. If we're doing drug interdiction, or if they're just out on traffic stops and they come across controlled dangerous drugs, then we need to seize it and that type of stuff. I don't know if I completely understand the question, but I hope I answered it.
You did very well, thank
Okay.
you. I want to go to Sheriff Owen here. What are the top priorities for the deputies, especially in regards to investigating property crime and then again to controlled dangerous substances? Kind of a twofold question.
Well, on property crimes, and they're going up, our deputies, their priority one is to get there, collect statements and evidence from the scene that they can utilize in court later once a suspect is identified, and bring that suspect to prosecution. That's done through a number of means, either by physical evidence like fingerprints, blood, things of that nature. Your deputies do that on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, we get lab reports back on things from OSBI regularly, and our deputies are hammering out affidavits for burglary warrants and getting these people in jail. The longer the time passes, the harder it is to recover some of the property. Sometimes the property gets in the wind, other times we get it back and we return it. Controlled dangerous substance with the Senate Bill 780 and 81 passing, had all these drug charges on it that piggybacked in, reduced a lot of the drug charges to misdemeanors. If you're not trafficking or possessing with intent, it's not a felony. So that's one aspect that the guys, they have to deal with those differently because they're misdemeanors. Do we arrest now? Do we get a warrant? Do we write a ticket? We obviously collect the evidence. And that's the priority, is the collection of the evidence now. The cut that the drug manufacturers or these drug dealers are using to cut the CDS with is usually fentanyl or another substance like that that's more dangerous than the actual drug itself. We recently experienced a incident where 2 Bartlesville officers were contaminated and were passed out here several months ago and had to go to the hospital. Had they been doing that by themselves, one of them likely would have died. So officer safety is the primary thing on that, and protecting the people that might have came in contact with it. So there are some of the priorities. We could go on for hours on this question, Tom. I'd love to.
All right. This will be our final question before we get into our closing statements. We talked about this, and it came up in conversation with both of you gentlemen earlier, and I want to revisit it. Officer retention. It's a big issue all across the United States. There are a lot of things that contribute to it, everything from budget, military call-offs, retirements, you name it. When it comes to this, what can you do to try to manage these various different things, to try to retain officers, keep them around a little bit longer?
The goal is to keep them around a long time. Okay, and to do that, you have to furnish them with good working environment, mentorship, training, all the things we've already talked about. One thing that has occurred recently is a Senate bill went through for retirement for deputies and detention officers, that they are now eligible to participate effective November the 1st in a 20-year pension program, just like the city police, just like the highway patrol, just like the firefighters. Deputies and detention officers have never been afforded that. They've always been on a standard government pension where they would have to work well into their golden years, and right now it's a rule of 90. This gives them the opportunity to pay in a little bit more and get a 20-year retirement, just like all the regular police officers. That's number one thing in retaining deputies. Number two, they need to be appreciated, and we really try to do that down there. I know Jeff has alluded to a turnover rate, and there is a turnover rate, and there always has been in law enforcement, but not like here lately. Part of that is because they couldn't get in the pension system. Part is because they were dissatisfied or decided to take a better employment. But the big thing is, with the public things going on and the things that the police have been scrutinized over recently in the last several months, there comes a time when law enforcement officers just decide, why would I want to be doing this job? The pay's not that great, and I can work in the private sector and make more money. The reason most cops do this job and they stay with it like I have for 35 years is because I'm committed to it, and this is what cops do.
Right, very good. And to you, Jeff Hessler, officer retention, we talked about this earlier. It's a big issue in the United States, all over the place, as far as law enforcement is concerned. What do you think that you can do in order to manage all these various different things contributing to officer retention?
Well, when I was talking to the Bartlesville FOP Lodge, that question or similar question was brought to my attention or asked of me. And I know that the retirement, the package that the police department has and the fire department has, that's not the same one as what the sheriff's office has. The sheriff's office is part of the OPERS, Oklahoma Public Employees Retirement System, and it's a point system where you have to work a certain number of years, plus your age has to equal a number, depending on when you get in, whether you have to work at 70, 80, or 90. Whenever you join the group. The current package with the FOP and the fire department is a 20-year retirement. And the Sheriff's Association was kind of against it because the Sheriff's Association or the Sheriff's departments here in Oklahoma, they're at-will employers. So they can fire at will without cause. To get into the retirement system, they were going to have to give that up. And some of them were resistant to that. We'd have to do it now for cause, termination. And you'd have to terminate for someone for cause. And so I would gladly give up that at-will option if it would mean my guys could get into the department. We also need to work on our public perception with how people are perceived, because everyone wants to be liked. Is just a natural innate in all of us. And with the constant just negative stuff out on Facebook and out in public, social media and stuff, it takes a toll on our officers. All the men and women just get beat down. And another thing would be salary. I'd try to work on getting a little bit more money for these guys so that we're not losing them to the public sector. So if we can increase their benefits and the salary and that type of stuff, then I think we'll go a long ways as far as keeping people.
Very good. You are watching the virtual Sheriff's Forum on K1TV.com. Also, you're listening to it on K1 AM 1400 FM 93.3. And it's brought to you by the Washington County Republican Party and also Phillips 66. It's time now for our closing statements, and we're going to start off with Jeff Fessler. Jeff?
Thank you. Throughout my years of public service, I've relied on my faith and trust in God to keep me grounded. I'm a member of Town and Country Christian Church, where I'm a deacon and serve in several capacities. I have a passion for serving others and believe in treating people with respect until given reason not to. And do that regardless of the circumstances that they find themselves in or their station in life. Here are some of the areas I'd like to focus on if elected as your sheriff. Of course, this list is not exhaustive. It's just give you some insight into my vision for the department. My desire is to restore the faith and positive public opinion in the Sheriff's Department with proper training for deputies and detention personnel. I'd like to address any potential issues with response times and citizen interactions. I would also like to work on retention of the deputies by creating an atmosphere of family amongst the law enforcement community. And I really want to promote more community involvement with positive interaction with law enforcement through community policing. I'll institute a critical incident debriefing for the mental well-being of our deputies and work diligently to remove the stigma of seeking help for emotional issues. I will review jail policies and procedures in an effort to minimize the liability and protect not only the detention personnel and inmates, but also the citizens of Washington County from potential litigation. I will encourage and facilitate ministry within the jail, and I will provide leadership for a service-minded mentality for all who serve. I am a hard worker with a great deal of perseverance, and there is no doubt that I will work diligently for the people I serve. I have a calm demeanor, and that allows me to work well with others, but I'm also a man of principle and has what it takes to stand up for what is right. My pick for undersheriff, should I get elected, he'll bring a lot to the table, although I cannot name him at this time since his current employment statutorily forbids him from being affiliated with the campaign. He's going to bring an asset, he will be an asset to the citizens of Washington County. He's a 20-plus year veteran of law enforcement and has managed a $7+ million budget for the last several years. His calm but authoritative demeanor will complement mine. We have spent hours discussing goals and implementation strategies, and together we'll assemble the right leadership team to move the department in the right direction. I have several posts on my Facebook page, Jeff Fessler for Sheriff 2020, that outline my history in law enforcement and public service, and they also speak of my qualifications, my certifications, and my experience. I encourage you to look it up and contact me directly if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to discuss any of those with you. I ask you to exercise your right to vote and let your voice be heard. Trust me when I say we need change. And with your vote for Jeff Fessler for Sheriff, you can be the one to initiate that change. I and my leadership team will do the rest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now a closing statement for Sheriff Scott Owen.
A little over 10 years ago, the citizens of this community took on a major undertaking in passed a bond that would support the jail and make it compliant with state standards, because the old jail was deteriorating and falling apart and had been failed. You, the city, and Washington County built one of the best jails in Oklahoma, and it is a diamond out there. Then Sheriff Rick Silver and Under Sheriff Steve Johnson created a tradition of excellence at that jail, at that sheriff's office. They turned that sheriff's office into a very large agency in comparison to what it was, just because of the nature of the jail and the size of the office and that had to be managed there. And when I come on, I found out really quick that we've got a good sheriff's office, we've got a good community, we get along well, and we do a lot of things within that community. We also do good police work, and we do good service for the jail occupants. And those, it's like when you run a hotel, you've got your customers. Well, we run the Bartlesville Hilton down there, and our inmates they're our people, and we treat them as such. I know we've heard a lot of negative at times. Employee retention, we're always striving to improve that, because the bottom line is some people that come to work for us, especially in our jail, you know, they think they know what they're getting into, but they don't really know. And a lot of them leave voluntarily because it's not what they're cut out for. And once you get someone that really fits the mold, you have to mold them and train them and do it just like you would any other business. We run a business down there. My 35 years in law enforcement, I have done almost everything there is to do in law enforcement, working both with the city and the county, supervised investigations, supervised operations, handled a $4.5 million budget at Bartlesville, and that's about what your budget is for Washington County when you include the jail, is $4 to $4.5 million. Additionally, I saw late in my career, or about mid-career, that I needed more education, so I attended Bartlesville's Oklahoma Wesleyan University, where I graduated with honors with a bachelor's of business administration and management, because I felt the need to better manage the money and the operations and the personnel, human resources for the county. Having said that, that's what I stand on right there, is my experience, my education, and my commitment to my community. God drives my life, and if it's God's will, I'll be your next sheriff for 4 years. If it's not, the good Lord will open another door for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being with us here tonight with our Sheriff's Virtual Forum here, as we have our candidates for Sheriff of Washington County in the runoff election coming up on the 25th. We have early voting on the Thursday and Friday, but on Saturday there. We want to make sure that everyone who can vote goes out to vote, and we want to remind the people who live in Bartlesville, this will be on your ballot, that the GO bond and the CIP will be on there too for those questions as well. There will be other questions in other communities. Copan, I believe there's a school board issue on there, and a few others too. So we want to thank you very much. I want to thank Jeff Fessler and also Sheriff Scott Owen for being here with us tonight. We want to thank the Washington County Republican Party and Phillips 66 for sponsoring this virtual forum. We now return you back to your regularly scheduled program on K1, AM 1400 and FM 93.3, the one you trust.